A direct diabolical attack from the devil is not something you hear much about among common people. Still, he's very active in everyone's life, causing chaos, confusion, fear, and doubt, and often disguised under a small piece of good. The saints had to fight the same temptations we do, but on top of this, they often had to fight off the physical assaults of the devil. So much was this part of their everyday life, they accepted the attacks of the devil as part of their way to holiness, and even came up with silly nicknames for him, rather than honor him by using his own name. St. John Vianney, known as a Curé of Ars, was a popular priest known for his compelling sermons and long hours in the confessional, often up to 16 to 18 hours. Many people were converted by John's preaching, and soon even people from outside of Ars came to see him. With all these spiritual victories, Satan was sure to retaliate, and he did. St. John Vianney tells us how it all started with strange noises in the night. He says, "About 9 o'clock at night, I was just about to go to bed when the demon came to torment me for the first time. 3 heavy blows were struck on the door of my courtyard, as if someone were trying to force it open. I opened my window and asked, 'Who's there?' But I saw nothing, so I commended myself to God and quietly retired. But before I had gone to sleep, I was startled again by 3 knocks that were louder still, not now on the outer door, but the one on the staircase that led to my bedroom. I got up and cried out a second time, 'Who's there?' No one answered. When these noises at night first began, I thought they were caused by burglars, so I thought I'd better take some precautions. I asked 2 brave men to sleep in the house who were ready to help me if I needed them. They came several nights in a row. They heard the noise but found nothing, so they were convinced that it had some causes other than the malice of men. I myself soon came to the same conclusion. One night in the middle of winter, I heard 3 violent knocks. I got up quickly from my bed and went down into the courtyard, expecting to see the intruders making their escape and intending to call for help. But to my astonishment, I saw nothing. I heard nothing. And even more, I found no traces of footprints in the snow. So I resigned myself to God's will, asking Him to be my guard and protector, and to surround me with His angels if my enemy should return once again to torment me. These disturbances took a toll on John, both physically and emotionally. In these early days of demonic torment, he was very afraid. He later said he would lie in bed, ready to die with fear. As a result of this, his health began to decline. His friends began to sleep in the adjoining rooms to offer support, but they too became frightened. One night, as one of the men took watch, he heard a loud crash nearby. It was so loud that it sounded to him like all the furniture in the room had suddenly been smashed to pieces. John began to realize that these attacks were of the devil and not of burglars, and he dismissed the guards. Over the next few nights, his fears began to diminish, and he actually became used to the noise. For 35 years, St. John battled the devil. With the attacks came all sorts of temptations, one of them being a fear of damnation. Often, he would suddenly see fire beneath his feet and hear a voice telling him that there was a place in hell with his name on it. John was eventually able to get over this fear, although it took years of constant appearances of the devil under all sorts of different forms and different attacks. But John soon became so accustomed to the devil's constant visits that he nicknamed him Grappin, which means wrestler. "Oh, the Grappin and myself," he once joked to someone, "we are almost buddies." The devil, too, had a nickname for John, although a very unusual one, Truffle Eater. One night, as the devil did his usual thing of knocking loudly on doors, making furniture move around, and tearing the curtains to shreds, he called out in a mocking voice, "Vianney, Vianney, you truffle eater, we'll get you. We'll have a hold on you." Sometimes the devil enjoyed using everyday noises to bother John. He would sometimes drive nails into the floor as with a hammer, and sometimes he sawed and planed planks. He sounded like a carpenter remodeling the interior of a house. Other times he drummed on the table, the chimney, or a water jug, always choosing objects that would make the loudest noise. The demons followed John everywhere. They followed him on the road, in his own lodging, and once even in the confessional. They would even lift him up high in the air and pull him around on the bed. They would shriek and moan under his bed, and once they even set it on fire. John usually made the sign of the cross to end the shenanigans. He once told someone, "The demon is very cunning, but he is not strong. Making a sign of the cross soon puts him to flight." A few days ago, he made an uproar, like the sound of all the carriages and lions driving over my head. Only last night, the whole troops of demons were shaking my door and babbling like foreigners. I didn't understand a word they said, but when I made the sign of the cross, they departed. Saint Gemma was a young Italian woman who suffered very much for God. In fact, God asked her to be a victim soul for sinners, to which she agreed wholeheartedly. Part of her sufferings, other than the stigmata and illnesses, were horrible attacks from the devil. Although the devil attacked Gemma in endless ways, he enjoyed provoking her to weariness and a loss of desire to pray. Then, when he found it impossible to make her lose sight of God, he caused her terrible headaches, which sent her to bed and unable to pray. She would say, "What torment this gives me, not being able to pray. What exhaustion it costs me. How many efforts does that wrench make it render it impossible for me to pray? Yesterday evening he tried to kill me, and he would have succeeded if Jesus hadn't come quickly to my aid. I was terrified and kept the image of Jesus in my mind, but I couldn't pronounce his name." Other times the devil would ridicule her by saying, "What are you doing? How stupid you are to pray to that evildoer. Look at the harm he does to you, keeping you nailed to the cross with himself. How can you care for him, for someone you don't even know, who makes all who love him suffer?" But Gemma was only outraged by such blasphemies directed toward her Jesus. In the midst of so much suffering, Gemma would tell her spiritual director of all these things, so he could provide her with direction and advice. This the devil could not bear, and he tried to turn her away from her spiritual guide. He depicted her director as an ignorant, fanatical, deluded man, and with many arguments, he strove to terrify her and hoped to convince her that she was all but lost. For some days, Gemma once wrote, "Cioppino," which is her nickname for the devil, which means burglar, "has pursued me in every guise and way and has done all in his power against me. This monster keeps on redoubling all his efforts to ruin me and tries to deprive me of anyone who directs or advises me. But even should this happen, I'm not afraid." Seeing that his efforts didn't succeed in shaking her confidence in her director, the devil then resorted to acts of violence. He assaulted her when she would try to write in her diary. He snatched the pen from her hand, tore up the paper, and then dragged her from the table, seizing her by the hair with such violence that it would come off in clumps. Then, withdrawing in fury, he shouted, "War! War against your spiritual father! War as long as he lives!" "Believe me, Father," she said to her spiritual director, "to hear this despicable wretch, you would think that his fury was against you more than against me." One time, the devil pretended to be a priest whom Gemma used to make her confession. When she went to the church to pray, she saw that the priest was already in the confessional, which puzzled her as she hadn't seen him enter the church. At the same time, she felt very disturbed in spirit, which she only felt when she was in the presence of the devil. Not realizing that the devil was impersonating the priest, she entered the confessional and began her confession. The priest's voice was the same as always, but he began to talk in a horrible and scandalous way, accompanied by improper gestures. Gemma, frightened, fled the confessional. When she looked back, she saw that the priest had disappeared, and only then did she realize that it was the devil, up to his nasty tricks again, trying to make her lose her confidence in the priest of God. One time, the devil appeared to Gemma in the form of an angel, radiant with light. He said to her, "Look here, I can make you happy if only you will swear to obey me." At this time of her life, Gemma hadn't had much experience with the devil and didn't realize who he was. In her innocence and simplicity, she stood there listening to him, but God came to her aid. After this, her eyes were opened. She stood up, exclaiming, "My God, Mary Immaculate, make me die rather than that." And with these words, she rushed toward the counterfeit angel and spat in his face. In that moment, she saw him vanish in the form of fire. Other times, the devil chose to tempt Gemma with disobedience. This attempt was to disobey her director, who told her not to engage in severe penances. She wrote about this to her spiritual director in a letter. "Listen, Father," she wrote. "Yesterday, after confession, on my return to the house, and as soon as I had a moment to myself, I knelt down, for it was the time of my prayer. Then I began to recite the rosary of the 5 wounds of Jesus. At the 4th wound, I saw before me a figure like Jesus, freshly scourged all over, with his heart laid open and bleeding. He said to me, 'Is this the way, my child, that you repay me? Look at me. See how much I have suffered for you. And now, instead, you cannot give me the consolation of those penances you were told not to practice. They really aren't much. You can very well continue them as you did before.' 'No, no,' I replied. 'I wish to obey my spiritual director, and if I do what you desire, I will be disobeying.' Then she heard him say that she wasn't the least obliged to obey her director, and that she should do as he himself told her. She was just about to return to her penances when the real Jesus intervened. 'Jesus helped me,' she wrote. 'I rose, took holy water, and became calm. Not, however, without receiving a blow or two, which has been a frequent gift for me from Satan. Then you know, Father, it was without a doubt Satan who had appeared to me.'" Gemma's spiritual director told her that no matter which form or persons that appeared to her, that she should always begin to say at once, "Long live Jesus and Mary." When she did this, the good angels that appeared to her would always repeat the words with her, "Long live Jesus, blessed be Jesus and Mary." But the evil spirits either would refuse to repeat the words, or would only say a few words but omit the names of Jesus and Mary. In this way, Gemma came to recognize who were the evil spirits, and she would scorn them accordingly. Many times the devil would try to discourage Gemma by physically beating her. She writes of this in her diary. "Today I thought I would be entirely free of that nauseating beast, and instead he has knocked me around brutally. I had gone to bed with the firm intention of sleeping, but it turned out otherwise. He began with powerful blows that made me fear I should die. He was in the form of a great black dog. He put his paws on my shoulders, making every bone in my body ache. At times I believed that he would maul me. Then one time, when I was taking holy water, he twisted my arm so cruelly that I fell to the earth in great pain. The bone was dislocated, but Jesus touched me and it went back into place. After a while, I remembered that I had around my neck the relic of the Holy Cross. Making the sign of the cross, I became calm. Jesus let me see himself, but only for a short time, and he strengthened me anew to suffer and struggle." In a letter, Gemma wrote, "Yesterday, too, the devil knocked me around. Aunt told me to draw a bucket of water to fill the room jugs. I was walking with the jugs in my hands, passing by the image of the heart of Jesus, and offering him fervent acts of love. Suddenly, I received such a strong blow of a stick on my left shoulder that I fell. Nothing was broken, but even today I feel very unwell, and everything I do seems to give me pain." In yet another letter, she again wrote, "Once more I have passed a bad night. The devil appeared before me as a giant of great height. He beat me fiercely all night and kept saying to me, 'For you there is no hope of salvation. You are in my hands.' I replied that God is merciful, and so I feared nothing. Then, giving me a hard blow on the head, he said in a rage, 'May you be accursed,' and disappeared. I went to my room to rest a little, and there I found him. He began again to strike me with a knotted rope, and he kept on because he wanted me to listen to him while he suggested wickedness. I said no, and he struck harder, knocking my head violently against the ground. At a certain moment, it came to my mind to invoke Jesus' Holy Papa. This is how she would speak of the Eternal Father. I called aloud, 'Eternal Father, through the most precious blood, free me.' I don't know quite what happened next. That disgusting beast dragged me violently from my bed and threw me, dashing my head against the floor with such force that it hurts me still. I became senseless and remained lying there until I came to myself a long time afterward. Jesus be thanked." Like St. John Vianney, these visits from the devil, as horrible as they were, only strengthened her trust in God, and soon she became so used to them and would remain serene no matter what the devil did to her. Sometimes she would even answer him mockingly until her director forbade this. After that, she would only say the name of Jesus, and this would be enough. At the name of Jesus, he was forced to leave. He would shuffle away in a hurry. "If you could have only seen him, Father," she wrote, "how he ran and often tripped as he fled and gave vent to his rage, you too would have laughed at him. How terribly he smells like burnt sulfur and how horrible to look at. But Jesus has told me not to fear him."